There is an easier way than just floundering around and writing shit tons of drafts, and I'm gonna show you how. In case you're new here with this new series, my name is Bridget. I am a queer writer and filmmaker from Canada, and I am here to help you write queer stories. So let's go. I'm going to show you how, as a queer person, we can have queer people at the center of our stories and make it fully intentional. Now, this is a topic that I have been diving into for the last little while, and I've come up with some cool little analogies, and this is the first video in a series, but we're not going to go into that right now. We are looking at the different types of queer stories. So you want to write a queer story, and you're queer yourself. You want to see more representation, but you don't know how to go about it. There's not really a blueprint for writing queer stories, so what do? So often we want to see ourselves on screen or on the page, but as queer people, there is not a lot of examples to pull from. We have not been in the public eye for very long in comparison to our non-queer counterparts, and so there is not a lot of examples of queer stories. There's a fair few, but definitely not to the same extent as like everyone else. So what are the different types of queer stories, and how can you implement them in your writing? So in this video, we are going to go through 3 different types of queer story. 1, the teacher. 2, the hiker. And 3, the poet. Yes, I like my analogies. You will find this out. And through this exercise, we are going to look at all 3 of these different cases. And yes, I am in a very dark academia-esque background. I'm kind of trying to dress as a detective. So we are going to be taking these on as different case files. So case 1 is the teacher, case 2, hiker, and case 3 is the poet. And for each one, we are going to look at the clues that suggest that this case is right for you to take on, and we are going to look at the obstacles that you may encounter while taking on this case. So let's dive into case number 1. Case number 1, the teacher. Now, this is the most common one that we see nowadays because it is also the most palatable to straight audiences. The teacher is the form of queer story that looks into the identity that your story revolves around. So in most cases, this is queer young adult fiction, this is coming of age, a lot of rom-coms that center around queer identity are like this. Shows like Heartstopper, movies like Crush might be on the edge, but the overall idea of this case file is to educate. Examples, I have some case notes here. Yes, it might be my script, but don't worry about that. Examples of these stories are Heartstopper, Maurice, the novel and the movie from 1987. If you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. It's kind of an inspo for these videos. She Gets the Girl, a book by, I can't remember the author's names, and many others. Okay, now there are some statistics that I have gathered from the GLAAD report. I believe it's from 2024, and it looks into the representation that we see, that we saw in 2024, and specifically this one is to do with film. So feature films, mainly studio made. In GLAAD's Studio Responsibility Index, they found that the films in 2024 that included LGBTQ+ characters, not even main characters, this is just like any queer character, any LGBTQ+ character in general. So we are talking about main characters, but this report is more so anything and everything. The identities that they looked at, the characters featured were 54% gay men, 39% lesbians, 25% bisexual people, 5% non-binary people, 5% queer characters, aka any other identity that falls in the mafia alphabet, and 3% trans characters. Now, I want to talk about this case file specifically because it is the biggest opportunity to bring more identities to light to bring more into the mainstream. So this is a really good opportunity if you're looking to bring more awareness to a specific identity. There are so many identities within queer culture that don't have as much representation, and some that I don't think I've ever seen represented on screen in like a really in-depth way. So doing an educational story is really an opportunity to do that. I'm gonna flip the page. Okay. They also, in this report, looked at the ethnicity disparity in these statistics. So within this ethnicity disparity, there is the percentage of queer people of color is really sad. Like it's a problem, guys. It's a real problem. So 64% of these queer characters, bear in mind, not even queer main characters, just queer characters in general, are white. They are Caucasian. Okay, I'm not gonna go into like, I hope you can't hear like somebody like rolling their chair all the way across the ceiling. It's really loud. I'm not gonna go into the full details of this report because I really want you guys to look into it in depth. So I'll leave a link to this in the description because it's a really useful thing to know and really opened my eyes to how much is left to explore, like how much more work we have to do, and not in like a bad way. I feel like it can be taken really as a mission. This is left to do. It's just really interesting. I don't think, like, we don't always have to take these things as a negative. Like it is definitely negative that we're kind of might be going backwards a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we can't move forward like a lot in the near future. So yeah, I'll leave a link to that down in the description, and I highly recommend you guys go and check it out. All of this to say that there is still so much to explore in queer representation. I think that there is so much untapped potential. The education case file, as you see before you, is very interesting, and this is something that is very specific. I think that it is very specific to certain genres, things like YA coming of age. It's something that you need to take the time to focus in so much. Having the center of your story be educating people on this identity is so vital. Having that intention is so vital because then you know what you're doing. You know that this is what you are striving for, and so you won't get distracted by things like world building. There's a reason why we don't have like new identities popping up in genres like fantasy and science fiction, because it's harder to, I guess, would it be shoehorn in like an explanation of someone's identity. It's harder to put that in without it sounding like a PSA. But that doesn't mean we won't get there. We just need to take slower steps. There is a very clear societal reason why the teacher case file is so common for people to pick up, because it is, I'm gonna correct myself a little bit. I don't think that it is for a lack of trying. I think that us as queer people, we want to see ourselves in a variety of situations. I think that we want to see ourselves in different genres. But the thing is that society isn't really letting us. So having the educator case file, it's not necessarily like queer people aren't picking it up. It's that societally, the networks or publishing houses aren't ready for it. They see the educator style as the safer option because it is easier to market. I think they see it as, a safer bet. It's easier to market, and it's easier to be sure that straight audiences won't run away. So now how do you know if this case is right for you? I'm gonna take you through, how many do I have? 3 clues and 2 obstacles that you might encounter. These are questions that you can ask yourself if you're wondering what kind of case file you want to pick up. And so we're gonna look at what are the clues this case is right for you, that you're gonna pick up the red one. I want you to ask yourself, is there an experience or identity you specifically want to see in the media and explore in a very overt way? This is like, you're spelling it out. It's a textbook. Is there a part of your own identity as a queer person that you want to explore in your story? this doesn't have to be exclusive to case number 1. I think that it can be explored in different genres and different ways, but it can be a good green flag. It can be a nice little thing. And lastly, is there an identity you see underrepresented and you want to help bring? Now, we are going to be looking a bit more into this later on in this series, so this is an area where I would encourage you to like do research, get a sensitivity reader, and all that fun stuff. So those are the clues. I am encouraging you guys to stick around for the rest of the video, not just because it's good for my algorithm, but because you can be surprised with which case actually screams out to you in regards to the story you're currently writing. So let's keep going. What are the obstacles that you may encounter with this case file? If you choose case number 1, you will most likely be limited in your genre choice. It is very common for it to be a young adult fiction or a coming of age. It is not usually science fiction or fantasy. It can be, I guess, mystery, but it is very common for this to fall under the young adult or simple fiction umbrella. And secondly, it is easier for your characters to become archetypes or stereotypes in this case file. That is case number 1. And so we are going to move on to case number 2, and that is the hiker. What did the hiker get up to in the woods, guys? I don't know. Now, I'm gonna swap it out. Actually, I'm gonna leave that one on here. So we have case number 2. The second type is the hiker, aka the non-queer centered story. Now, the first one is basically the queer-centered story. In this case file, we are looking at a queer story that does not have your queer character's identity at the center of its plot. This is a case file that is often an ensemble. It is often a science fiction, fantasy. It's usually what we call genre fiction. So let's take a look at an example. So the example I have for this one is the very queer Disney Plus show, Agatha All Along, starring Catherine Hahn, Joe Locke, Patti LuPone, all the wonderful people. Now, the example of this is that we have 2 confirmed queer main characters in Agatha and Billy, aka Teen. Now, throughout the story, we have Agatha and Teen / Billy. I'm gonna call him Billy. We have them just existing. This is the case file where your queer characters are just existing. We just want to show that we're real people and we have real problems and we can go and slay dragons if we want to. So in Agatha All Along, Agatha's sexuality is every once in a while brought up, but nobody really bats an eye. They're kind of like, yeah, maybe she likes women, whatever. We got bigger fish to fry here. We don't have time to sit around chit-chatting about Agatha and who she wants to sleep with. Don't worry about it. She's sleeping with literally Lady Death. It's fine. So in this, I am going to reference back to case number 1 because there is a big difference between these 2. The key difference is that case number 2, usually we don't have characters that are outside of the queer identities we usually see. So usually that is gay men, that is lesbians, bisexual people, and occasionally trans people. I think sometimes I've seen a non-binary character, but it's rare. So that is kind of a limitation. However, it does open doors. It does lend itself to exploring queer people in different genres. So that's a lot of fun. We get to have fantasy adventures. We get to have witches, and we get to be more complex than at other times. I have another statistic from the Glad Day report. This is in the 2025 film report. And we're looking at what genres were most common for queer characters to feature in. Feature / just exist in, I guess. But the top genres that queer characters were in were as follows. At number 1 is comedy. Number 2 is drama. Number 3 is literally like action / sci-fi / fantasy. They just kind of bunch those all together. And lastly, horror. This does show a very stark difference in the educational versus non-queer queer-centered stories, since comedy and drama are usually educational, whereas science fiction, fantasy, and horror are not. Horror, we're usually killed off. Now, they do have other reports. There is like a television report and there is a game report, I believe. But I recommend you guys check those out as well. So let's look into the clues that case number 2 is the right fit for you and your story right now. For this one, I have 2 clues and 2 obstacles. We have a few less clues. We have 1 less clue. Number 1, I want you to ask yourself what genre you actually want to write in. And number 2, are the identities you want to depict widely known, or do they need more time to be explored for your audience? Now, this is not a deal breaker. Like, you can push the boundaries of what is widely known, but it's a good thing to think about. Now, with all that in mind, let's look at the obstacles if you choose to go through with this case. Obstacle number 1, exploring identities more deeply can take the audience out of your story. You have to take extra care with the exploration of this identity, because it can turn into a PSA. It can be like, let's take 5 minutes to explain my identity, and just like pull people out of the story. And that's not fun. And secondly, identity can easily fall to the sidelines to favor action and or world building. It can just be like, who cares? It's like, it's really what is your priority in this case. Now, lastly, we are moving on to case number 3, the poet. So case number 3, aka the poet, is kind of the bridge between cases number 1 and 2. And it is also known as the allegory. This is something that I encountered when I watched, quite recently, I saw the TV Glow, which, if you haven't seen it, amazing film, highly recommend. And the trans allegory was really powerful to experience, and this is something that was commonly used earlier on in queer media because it was an easier way to fly under the radar. This is something that I've looked a bit more into in my recent research, but it is a really cool way to add a bit of subtext and make a little nod to the audience that you're looking to talk to. Now, when it comes to I Saw the TV Glow, I'm going to talk about this example for a minute. The idea around the trans allegory is so interesting, and I'm going to link a video that I watched down in the description because I highly recommend you go check it out. It was really interesting, and it's from a trans creator, so I'm not going to speak for their experience. It was a really powerful video, and it was actually longer than the actual movie. It was kind of hilarious. I'm like, I'm just gonna watch someone talk about the movie for another hour. But I highly recommend it. It's really interesting. But the thing with the allegory that I found was that it really just amplifies the experience. In this case, the main character, at least one of the main characters, is openly queer, and that's Maddie, I believe. Yes. Maddie comes out to the other main character, Owen, as a lesbian, and throughout the film, trans audiences kind of caught on to a different identity for Maddie or something else. But definitely, through the allegory of the film, it is heavily suggested that Owen himself is questioning his identity. And it gives this amazing allegory of internalized homophobia or transphobia or both. It really gives this allegory of repression. And that experience is an experience that so many people can relate to and that so many people still struggle with today. And so bringing that into your stories, no matter what genre you're working in, no matter what case file you choose, I think that case 3 is really something that is so expansive and interesting. It's something that I've actually been incorporating into my writing, and it's so powerful. I think that especially as artists, it's so interesting to dive into imagery, to dive into what kind of metaphors that we can use, what kind of allegories, obviously, with what this case is. But it's also just fascinating to try and convey an extra message on the subtextual level. Let's quickly look. Now, let's look at clues to see if the allegory case file is right for you. And now, this one, as I said, is something that I think it's like running with my own allegory. It is a case file that you can also take things from in any other case. You can find a connection to this case in either of the other two. So if you want to, it's pretty flexible. It's a pretty flexible case. But let's look at some clues. Clue number 1, is there a theme you want to explore more in the background of your story? And number 2, do you enjoy writing in symbolism and going into deeper themes of society and psychology? Now, this is really interesting, and I'm going to look into it more in a future video, so stick around for that. I wrote that script and I was like, ooh. I've been looking into, I literally just rewatched the X-Men movies, and it really got me going down a rabbit hole, so stick around for me when we're ranting about X-Men, but let's look at the obstacles that you could encounter. Okay, obstacle number 1. You will struggle if you do not like planning your story. This is a case that needs so much planning. It's kind of ridiculous. Having an allegory is really fun, but it can also lead to a giant rabbit hole. So be prepared for that. Allegories are intricate and require a lot of planning to land. Yeah, it can take a lot of rewrites. I think this is something that I've just started doing, so it's reworking my whole story. And number 2, you simply want to write something fluffy. In most cases, allegories take on a darker tone. So those are all 3 of the queer story types that I could come up with. If you guys know of any other queer story types, please leave them down in the comments. I am very curious if you have other case files to bring to the table. Let's recap all 3 of the cases. I'm gonna put the case files on the table so that we can look at them and try and do it one-handed. We're gonna see how it goes. Like this. So, on the table here, we have case number 1. This is the educator, and this is where your character's queer identity is at the center of your story. Usually, young adult fiction. Case number 2 is the non-queer centered story. This is usually science fiction or fantasy. It's usually genre fiction. And this is where we show queer characters just existing, maybe slaying dragons, having fun, and all that good stuff. And lastly, case number 3, we have the allegory. And this is where you dive into more psychological stuff, and it can be in any genre, but it also adds a deeper layer for you to explore more deep themes. So let me know down in the comments if you guys have a case file that's screaming out to you. And yes, that's all. I am very excited for you guys to choose all you want and, I don't know, create more rainbows. I want you guys to be prisms for new rainbows, because, you know, prisms have like rainbows inside and they create rainbows. So go off and be prism for a new rainbow. Bye.